Rocking Entrepreneur, Episode 9.
If starting a company is your passion, I highly recommend it. It is one of the most transforming, game changing, life forming experiences you would ever have.
Hello, Rockstars. I'm your host, Tushar Sharma from Rocking Entrepreneur, where we chat with Indian entrepreneurs from India and all over the world. And today, I'm so excited to have Shail Kumar here with me today. Shail, are you ready to rock?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Great. Shail graduated from IIT Kharagpur and then got his MBA from Kelly School of Business. He was the co-founder of the Pan IIT alumni movement, which has grown into a huge phenomenon today. Shail has over 20 years of leadership experience in several Fortune 500 companies and startups. And most recently, Shail has been working on his book titled Building Golden India. This book draws his immense experience and amazing feedback from revolutionaries all around the world towards building a golden India. Welcome to the show, Shail. I've given our fellow rockstars a brief introduction, so take some time and describe a bit more about your professional and your personal life.
Well, thank you, Tushar, for the opportunity to be on your show. It's a pleasure to be here and be with fellow entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs. I want to share a little bit about my childhood years, because I think it's sort of relevant to our discussion later on. And so I actually grew up. My father was an officer in the Indian Army, so I grew up around the country in various army cantonments. And as you can imagine, there was visible and perpetual display of love for the country in these places. As a student in Kendriya Vidyalaya, we used to periodically sing songs about bringing back the glory days of India's golden age and Takshashila and Nalanda. And as you might know, at IIT Kharagpur, we were reminded daily of our duty to the nation. Thus, my love for India, consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously, is part of my DNA. It is who I am. Secondly, again, on a personal front, growing up, it was very evident that I was part of a middle class family and we had to stand on our own feet. Getting an education, good education, was the only means to get anywhere in life. Looking back, I can say with certainty that I am who I am because of my education, especially higher education. So I was very fortunate to have gone to IIT Kharagpur, where I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and they were among my most memorable 4 years. Worked in India for a few years, and I got my MBA, as you said earlier. Then I worked in several Fortune 500 companies. And at one point at Applied Materials, I had worked for uh, the head of global operations and planning, as well as the chief financial officer. And then I was working in the group strategy office. And that's when I decided that I wanted to start a company. And then I ended up starting two companies as co-founder and CEO. Subsequently, I was for about 5 years an administrator at University of California at Berkeley, and for just about a year, again an administrator at University of California, San Diego.
Great. And congratulations, the book just got launched,
just
correct?
last year, I decided to write my book. So
All right.
here I
And the
am.
book is titled Building Golden India. And in what form, Shall, is
Correct.
the book available to people in the US and in India? Hmm.
So currently, Tushar, the book is available on Amazon.com. It is available in both paperback and ebook versions on Amazon in the US and UK and
All
a few
right.
select
And fellow
countries.
rockstars, I will
In
have the
India,
link to
currently,
the
it's
book
available
for
only in
download
ebook
in the
version.
show notes for this episode. So make sure to check that out when you're reading. Make sure to check that out. Okay, Shell, you have tremendous amount of history as an entrepreneur and as a successful business person. And in this long history, you must have had several moments of ups and downs. So, what we want to really focus on now is one of the lowest of the low moment, your worst entrepreneur moment. So what would be that moment for you, and describe about that moment and what happened in that moment and how did you get out of that moment?
That's a great question, Tushar. I think, as you pointed out, and I'll emphasize, as an entrepreneur, the highs are very high and the lows are very low. So it's a really uh, exciting roller coaster ride, to say the least. So the worst entrepreneurial moment for me was in my first startup. So just to provide a backstory on that, in 1999, I was doing extremely well at a high-tech company called Applied Materials. As I mentioned, I had already worked for the head of global operations and planning. I had briefly also worked for the chief financial officer, and I was in the corporate strategy office. And I um, left a very promising fast track career at Applied Materials to start my own company with a fellow IITian. Being in Silicon Valley, as you can relate to, it's infectious. The startup culture is infectious. During 1999, the internet was still what appeared to be boom times. So we took the plunge and started the company. Fast forward a year after raising uh, one or two rounds of capital, when I was raising another round of capital from venture capitalists and angels, it became really clear that the money for our startup in the internet space had dried up. And it was not just for a company, it was across the board, sort of early indicator of the bust that happened in the financial sector as a result of the internet uh, market valuations. So at that time, we realized that there was nothing we could do to take the company forward because we needed capital to build on the momentum we had generated by then, build more value as we had aspired to do, but we had no capital available in front of us. Fortunately, we took the market feedback honestly, and we went back to the board, which consisted of the two co-founders. We had brought in the previous chief financial officer of Applied Materials, the chief executive officer of a retail company, and a partner from Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich and Rosati as a law firm to be on the board. And we took the idea and the feedback and really had a tough discussion with the board and made the recommendation, which was accepted, that we need to sell our company and exit the market because that was the best way to monetize the value that we had created. The worst moment was recognizing there's no more capital and there was nothing we could do. There was nothing in our control that we could take the company forward.
Great. So,
So that
what
would
would
be
be a key
my
learning you would say for our fellow rock stars?
worst
Or, if,
moment,
in other words, if you were to
Tushar.
redo the whole startup again today, what would you do differently?
That's a tough question to answer, Tushar, but I think the key learning for me was, and it's true for all startups, that there are no guarantees of success. There are a lot of uh, variables that one doesn't control at all. And I just shared one variable that we couldn't control, which is the market conditions for venture capital and private equity or private funding. So the lesson that I would like to share with fellow rock stars is that while there are no guarantees for success, what's really key that's true for all startup is the speed to market and building on the momentum that one creates. And I think that's really what's under uh, the control of the founders and the founding team is how quickly you can create compelling value and keep building on the momentum one after another, because that's the only thing you control. Everything outside of your control is just, you can't worry about it. So whatever you can do to that improves the speed to market is really, really key, because that also helps reduce the sort of cash burn that happens on a sort of periodic basis.
Great.
That
And
would be
fellow
my
rock stars,
key
you miss 100%
recommendation or
you
advice
miss
to
100% of
fellow
the shots you do
entrepreneurs.
not take. So it's always better to take a shot rather than to miss it, right? All right, great. So also you must as an entrepreneur you must have had several aha moments.
Absolutely.
Take us to one particular aha moment that you would describe was your best entrepreneurial moment and describe that story to us.
So, Tushar, um, the aha
Mhm.
moment I want to share
Absolutely.
with your audience is not necessarily related to the entrepreneurial moment, but it's a life moment, I would say. Uh, and the year, fast forward 2006, I had by then started two firms, two startups, and then I had rejoined corporate America. I was in 2006 senior director
Mhm.
of corporate strategic planning at Lamb Research. I was reporting to the chief financial officer, and the chief executive officer was my mentor. I had the privilege of working with the senior executives in Lamb around the world. And I was responsible for one of the corporate strategic initiatives called the multi-billion, multi-product initiative, which was something that was really key for the company's future. By all measures, I was doing extremely well in terms of where I was, what I was doing, the kind of impact I could make within Lamb. Uh, and that's when I got this aha moment, which I consider sort of a life moment, when I sort of took a step back and said, you know, must have worked over thousands of hours volunteering for IIT alumni movement. First for IIT Kharagpur alumni network, and then for the Pan IIT alumni movement that I co-founded. And what struck me is that that volunteering work was deeply important to me, of thinking about each questions like how can you improve and sustain excellence at IIT Kharagpur and the IIT system, in those areas. And that's when it came to me that, or I decided that I needed to be working full time in a college or university. And I made the very tough decision of leaving what, by all measures, would be an outstanding opportunity at Lamb Research to join University of California at Berkeley. But looking back, I think that was clearly
Mhm.
one of the most
So, what were
important
the
and
challenges in implementing
game-changing
this
decisions for me
particular
personally
decision, and how
and
was the
professionally.
transition to a university environment?
So, Shah, it was a very tough decision. I was, in fact, taking a huge pay cut, leaving Lamb Research to join UC Berkeley. It was a very tough family decision, but I was convinced deep in my heart and soul that that's the right thing to do. So, in some ways, it was tough, and in some ways, it was really easy to make that decision. Um, the transition from Lamb Research to UC Berkeley um, was tough at one level. The corporate culture, the cultures at the two organizations were very, very different. High tech companies have a very different culture than a public state university. The risk reward equation is very different. The pace and the decision making processes are very, very different. And I don't want to get into the details of what the differences are, but they are very meaningful, deep changes that I had to sort of adjust to. But what made my transition really easy in some ways was the fact that I was now working in one of the world's top research universities with some of the most outstanding faculty members in an environment that really nurtured learning for the students, research, and making an impact. So that was something that I was really excited, and that working in that environment just made it really, really easy But I was working for a cause that was dear to my heart with people who were some of the most talented, gifted, hardworking, passionate people.
Great. Like Mark Twain once said, the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And Shell, you have a great, inspiring story. And that particular decision turned out to be the best decision for you. So, real quick questions. What is the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
To share with the book, my biggest, so I'm really grateful that it has received incredibly rave reviews from thought leaders, university leaders, faculty members in leading institutions such as Stanford, MIT, UC Berkeley, young professionals, entrepreneurs, industrialists, and students. So I'm really, really excited about that. My biggest challenge and an opportunity is to reach a wider audience. That's where I'm working on my outreach efforts to reach as many people as possible so that they can be familiar with the book, the messages, the research, the stories, and the compelling reasons why we must address India's higher education system.
Share one of your personal habits that contributes towards your success.
I want to say so many, but if there's one that I would say is persistence. I think it sort of relates back to your other question. How was I able to overcome my difficulty in writing, which doesn't come naturally? And I think this being able to persist is a habit. I don't know if it's a habit, but it's a trait that has really helped me in everything I have done thus far.
There's a very famous quotation, Rockstars by Zeg, which says, people often say that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. So, Shelv, other than building Golden India, what book would you recommend to our fellow rock stars and why?
So there are two books I would recommend to Shar. One is a book called Spirit of St. Louis. It is written by Charles Lindbergh, and you may recall Charles Lindbergh as the first person who crossed Atlantic on a solo flight. It's a book that he wrote about his life, his journey, and the flight. And it was one of the most motivating, most gripping, and most useful book I've actually read, even though it has nothing on surface about entrepreneurship, but the deep lessons, the lessons it shares, it's actually applicable for every single entrepreneur. So I would highly recommend entrepreneurs reading that book. It's very well written, and the lessons are just amazing. The second book I would recommend, and I'll tell the reason first. Um, in startups, there are a lot of it's a lot of highs and lows. It's a roller coaster ride. And a lot of times, actually, one starts asking, why am I doing? Is it the right thing? Should I go back to my comfortable job back in wherever I was that paid my monthly bills, etc., etc.? And sometimes you also come across some moral dilemmas and ethical challenges and things like that. And for that reason, I would recommend fellow rock stars the Bhagavad Gita, written by any number of authors, because actually, Bhagavad Gita helped me at times when I was at the low of the lows to sort of pick myself up and start doing my duty and start doing what I needed to do. So those are the two books I would highly recommend.
Great. Fellow rockstars, you have the source of inspiration from the man himself. And rockstars, you are the average of the five people you hang out the most with, and you have been hanging out with Shell and Tushar. Shell, we had an amazing discussion with you. I just love your story, and we hope that building Golden India does tremendously well. And a lot of people go through it and get inspired by it and get inspired to participate in this educational reform, and there is like something comes out concrete from this educational reform. But before we part, what is one piece of advice that you have for the rockstars out there, and very quickly the best way to get in touch with you?
Thank you, Tushar, first of all, for the opportunity to speak with you and your fellow rock stars. I think the advice I would like to give to all of you is that if, in fact, starting a company is your passion, I highly recommend it. It is one of the most transforming, game changing, life forming experiences you would ever have. but do it only if you're passionate, because as Tushar has mentioned, as I mentioned, the highs are high and lows are even lower. So go do it. And if you all want to get in touch with me, I think the best place I would recommend is actually my website. It has all the information about my book, about myself, and how to get in touch with me. So I'll just share that. It's www.shailkumar.com. It's spelled ShailKumar.com.
Well, thanks a lot, Shell. And we will have that link, fellow rock stars, for you in the show notes page for this episode. So make sure you check out the page and make sure you get in touch with Shell if you really like the book. And Shell, thanks for taking your valuable time out. We had a great time on Rocking Entrepreneur, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, Tushar.
Thank you.